Today is Friday, June 6th, Journalists' Day. Congratulations to everyone. I wish you success, creative achievements, inspiration, strength, and professionalism. And so June 6th is traditionally celebrated this way in Ukraine. And in fact, on this day, I have a briefing for you, as usual, timely information about the events that I consider relevant, important, and worthy of your esteemed attention. As always, there is certainly plenty to discuss, and that's exactly what we're going to do right now. Well, first of all, Russia, as they say, the mountain has given birth to a mouse. Putin has indeed resorted to what many have talked about, written about, hyped up the situation, what Trump mentioned, what Russian propagandists wrote about, and what we expected. And I told you this could happen, namely a large-scale missile and drone attack. That's exactly what happened last night across many regions. Unfortunately, there are wounded, and there have been strikes on our cities. Kherson, Kharkiv, Kyiv was affected, as well as Khmelnytsky region and Volyn. In other words, the enemy carried out a combined attack using Shahed-type drones and other types, as well as caliber cruise missiles, and also launched what remains of their strategic aviation in the form of Tu-95 aircraft, firing Kach 101 missiles. So essentially that's what the enemy used. This is what constitutes a major strike. The results in terms of numbers will soon be provided by the Air Force of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Then it will be possible to assess and comment, including on the condition and performance of our air defense system. More details on this will come later. But there is another important event, actually, two important events that happened simultaneously with this. First, about 400 UAVs of various types flew into Russia, targeting different regions: Bryansk, Lipetsk, Moscow, and Oryol. There is a long list of places where these drones flew, and the local authorities, governors, and the regional leadership reported that drones were incoming. And this is a very good trend. In other words, we are not waiting. If you launch Shahids at us, it means our drones will be flying at you in large numbers. So don't get too comfortable. That's the first point. Second, a repeated strike was carried out on the locations where the Russian 26th Missile Brigade was stationed, actually not just stationed, but where they were based at that moment. Iskander-type missiles, ballistic missiles, which were aimed at Chernihiv, Sumy, and Kyiv. In this way, it was possible to prevent the use of these missile systems. This was done the night before, directly during the night from June 5th to 6th. The videos and photos are already on social media. It's impressive. A massive fire and the detonation of ammunition, specifically the detonation of the missiles themselves. These are the results of successful combat operations. That is, the Iskander systems were struck twice, literally between the 4th and, well, let's say the 6th, because technically it was already the night from June 5th to 6th. And we can see the results, as this also made it possible to reduce the enemy's potential to use missiles and to carry out attacks. After all, Russia was heavily relying on the Iskanders. So these kinds of successful preventive defensive actions largely disrupt the enemy's plans. In addition, the war is now shifting onto Russian territory, which overall is also very positive. In addition, an interesting piece of news also appeared overnight, because residents of Kazakhstan witnessed a fascinating atmospheric phenomenon in their airspace. Immediately, videos and photos began to appear on many social networks, showing what people described as either a comet, an asteroid, or even a UFO, an aliens appearing in the sky. People in Kazakhstan couldn't figure it out, but as usual, Russian propagandists and military correspondents stepped in to shed some light on the situation. They revealed that a launch of the Oreshnik had taken place from Kapustin Yar, which is located near Akhtubinsk, right by the border with Kazakhstan. The only thing is, the Oreshnik launch went completely wrong, and instead of heading toward Ukraine, it flew toward Kazakhstan. In other words, it was an Oreshnik missile that basically malfunctioned, which, as we can see, is not the first time a Russian Wunderwaffe either fails to work or doesn't meet the technical specifications claimed by its designers, developers, and manufacturers. So I don't think there's anything surprising about that. I'd like to take us all back about half a year ago when there was hysteria. Do you remember November, December 2024? Russia made a lot of threats about using the Oreshnik. There was a lot said about it at the time. Putin was almost reminding everyone every week that he had this so-called Wunderwaffe and that he could use it. And of course, there is no equivalent as always, and no air defense system would be able to handle it and so on. But at that time, Kirill Budanov, the head of the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense, made a clear prediction. So Mr. Budanov was absolutely right when he said that Russia simply does not have a large number of these missiles, and it is unknown how reliable they actually are. And they exist there literally in just a few experimental prototype units. Well, judging by how events are unfolding with these failed launches, it turns out that Mr. Budanov was right. But what can you do? They wanted to deliver a more massive strike against us. But technology is working against Putin. That's already clear and obvious. It's like a machine uprising there against Putin. Frankly speaking, that's why nothing worked out. They failed to make this so-called act of retaliation bigger than we could have expected or anticipated. Unfortunately, the same methods of terror, unfortunately, strikes on civilian cities, residential areas, innocent people terrorism is the hallmark of Putin today, and not just today. And nothing new has happened here, so there will be even more strikes on Russia, even more consequences from our summer campaign. I think there will be results. Now, let's move on to some other interesting news. First of all, we're going to talk about the so-called Toad and Viper pit in the USA, Trump and Musk. It's not like, friends, we didn't expect this. At least those who follow my channel know and see that there was a warning about this, that Musk and Trump would part ways and their paths would go in different directions. We'll talk about this now because things have really heated up there and they've run into some serious problems. But first, let's talk about something else. About the fact that US President Trump made a series of statements during his meeting with Friedrich Merz, the Chancellor of Germany. So, what did Trump say? Putin has taken a heavy blow. I don't think he's playing games. The number of people killed as a result of the war between Russia and Ukraine is much higher than what the media reports. If Russia crosses the line, you will be surprised at how tough we are. But we are not surprised at how not tough you are and at how Trump continues to drag out time and give that time to Putin. I stand with Ukraine. I am for stopping the killings. Really? Interesting. If that's really the case, then why don't we hear about new aid packages and weapons that we need? Because we understand from what the Biden administration has promised that their supplies are not unlimited and they are running out. We need something new. So the question is where? And next, Trump also commented on the SBU's spiderweb operation. Something happened a few days ago, and now the Russians are preparing a response. And you know, that's not good. I'm not happy about it. Something happened. This was a successful Ukrainian operation on Russian territory. I'm not satisfied with this. Perhaps this was Trump's way of hinting to Putin that he shouldn't strike Ukrainian territory. Well, it's strange. If you're not satisfied, then you just need to strengthen Ukraine and impose tougher sanctions against Putin. That's exactly what we've been urging and asking to be done repeatedly. There is a solution, the proposals exist, and they're on the table. So what's the problem here? Well, I don't understand, but it can be done. And Trump stated that the timeline for imposing sanctions against Russia exists only in his own mind. He says that if necessary, they will apply tough pressure. And not only Russia could suffer, but Ukraine as well. Interesting. Trump also compared the situation in Ukraine to two little children fighting in a park. It's an interesting notion that only Ukraine would suffer. But I'll tell you, this is a moment of frankness and truth from Trump. After all, I want to remind you that we have already seen and witnessed that the United States of America, under President Donald Trump's administration, put pressure on Ukraine. Actually, it pressured our country more than it did Russia. That's a fact. This includes the suspension of aid, the withholding of intelligence sharing, and political pressure. We witnessed all of this. It all happened. Now we are waiting to see pressure put on Russia. Let Russia finally suffer from sanctions. I hope the US Senate will be able to show resolve and reach a principled decision by starting to consider a bill to impose 100 to 500% sanctions powerful and tariff-based restrictions against Russia, even against the will of the US president. Because, excuse me please, after all, it seems that Trump will indeed have problems because of Elon Musk's direct opposition to him. A real clash has begun between Elon Musk and Donald Trump. Musk called Trump ungrateful and stated that without him, Trump would have lost the election. He claims that his tax bill is an abomination, a disgusting abomination, because it increases the budget deficit. In response, Trump downplayed Musk's role in his election campaign, saying that he would have won even without him. He also added that he is very disappointed in him. The simplest way to save money in our budget, billions of dollars, is to break contracts with Elon Musk, Trump wrote. Amid the conflict, Tesla's shares fell and Musk launched a poll on social network X about creating a new party. Is it time to create a new political party in the US that will represent the interests of 80% of the middle class? Musk asked. After that, Trump wrote that Musk has simply gone crazy. Musk responded, Trump appears in the records from Epstein's Island. That's the real reason why the records haven't been published. Elon Musk also agreed that Trump should be impeached and that J.D. Vance, the current vice president, should take his place. And in light of Trump's predictions, all government contracts related to me have been cancelled. SpaceX is beginning to decommission all Dragon spacecraft. Well, that's the situation. Basically, as I said before, this was predictable. The fact that Trump and Musk would part ways was only a matter of time, given their personalities, temperaments, views, and the ambitions that Elon Musk has as well. So it was clear that there would be discord between them. Now, the question is very interesting. To what extent is technological capitalism? To what extent is it a representative of large corporations and, well, as they are also called, digital giants or digital oligarchic clans of the United States? Let's use such terminology perhaps more understandable to us, because Musk represents, he is in many ways a general representative of the American Silicon Valley. So the question now is, first of all, to what extent can this class, specifically, to what extent can Musk secure effective support from his peers in the industry? And to what extent can they advance certain things, let's say, play in opposition to Donald Trump? And will they be able to do this? And will they really have such a strong influence? This is, in many ways, truly very interesting, because it's not just about Trump and Musk right now. It's also about the near future in the US, which many people are writing and talking about. And now we are witnessing it firsthand. Will large corporations and figures like Elon Musk and others like him have a more significant influence on American politics? In other words, we're talking about corporations, business, and big politics, the White House, Washington. This is the question right now. We'll see. But obviously, let's put it this way. Such discord definitely doesn't benefit Trump. But it's his own fault that chose that team himself. And this, by the way, once again, in many ways mirrors what happened during Trump's 45th presidency, when at the beginning of his term he also had one set of trusted people in his administration, advisors, assistants, consultants in various positions, and then he gradually got rid of them and refreshed his team. So there's nothing surprising about this. However, this technological war between Musk and Trump could have consequences. It's interesting. Meanwhile, Germany has started to support Ukraine more actively. We're talking about aid. In particular, our country is set to receive 5 billion euros for the needs of the army. There is also an active discussion about the supply of Taurus missiles and whether this is actually realistic. But there are already suggestions as to what alternative weapons could be. Well, as for alternative weapons, there are the Luchi drones, as reported by Defense Express, and the Bus missile drones. These weapons could be purchased in Ukraine and funded. We understand that, for example, the Luchi drones funded by German money could be ready a bit sooner, but obviously it's not the case that something completely new can be developed in just a month, especially a ballistic missile, as Defense Express notes. So basically, the Germans are trying to buy their way out. Discussions are still ongoing. They are not ready to hand over their long-range Taurus missiles, which we could really use, but they are willing to finance production here. What will be the alternative? It's interesting, we'll see. But it's good that at least this is happening. Frankly, it's bad that it's without the Taurus missiles, because a missile is a missile, especially one with stealth technology, making it less visible to Russian radars and less vulnerable to their air defense systems. There's no comparison. But it's definitely good that they're providing financial support for production. Well, 1,300 million euros will be invested in our production for Ukraine. This was announced by Ukraine's Minister of Defense, Umerov. He noted that within the framework of the Danish model, military support will increase to 1.3 billion euros as early as 2025. As the head of the Ukrainian Defense Ministry noted, the first tranche of 428 million euros from Denmark, Sweden, Canada, Norway and Iceland will soon be allocated for the production of Ukrainian weapons, specifically artillery, strike drones, missiles and anti-tank systems. This decision is the result of our conversation with my colleague and friend Troels Lund Poulsen, the Minister of Defense of Denmark. The Ukrainian artillery system Bodana and more are being produced according to the so-called Danish model. And the list of countries I mentioned, Canada, Norway, Denmark, Iceland, and now Sweden, joining them clearly demonstrates how the northern countries are acting. Well, Canada is obvious. But there are countries in Northern Europe that, no matter what, continue to support Ukraine not only by directly supplying weapons, but also by investing in weapons production here in our country. And this is very important, frankly speaking, because it could have significant consequences for international relations. Furthermore, the Senate is fully prepared and willing to provide President Trump with additional tools and resources to take stronger action against Putin. And these won't be carrots. Lindsey Graham, an American Republican senator, isn't stopping, and that's a very good thing. And he stated that the Senate is ready to soon give Trump more tools against Putin, considering his behavior. According to Graham, he has always considered Trump the only person who can end the war between Russia and Ukraine honestly and fairly. It is clear that, given Putin's behavior and his refusal to be reasonable, the Senate will soon provide President Trump with even more tools in his arsenal. And it won't be a carrot. He added that he appreciates the fact that Trump made contact with Putin, that he tried to get him to the negotiating table, but they are also prepared for tough actions. Well, I hope that the Senate will finally find the will and courage to begin considering the bill on imposing more extensive sanctions against Russia. Graham, the senator, is trying to do this in a more democratic and diplomatic way, saying that on the one hand he supposedly supports Trump, but on the other hand tougher sanctions are needed. But it's already necessary to go directly against even Trump himself. Well, if Musk has already taken that step, then why shouldn't the senators do the same? Pope Leo XIV has called on Russia to take measures to end the war in Ukraine. During his first conversation with Putin, the Pope noted that he is calling on Russia to make a gesture that would contribute to peace, emphasizing the importance of dialogue for establishing positive contacts between the parties and finding ways to resolve the conflict. The Pope and Putin also discussed ongoing efforts regarding prisoner exchanges and the value of work in this direction. This was stated by Cardinal Matteo Maria Zuppi, Archbishop of Bologna. The Pope mentioned Patriarch Kirill, expressing his gratitude, and so on. Well, the Vatican is actively getting involved. We'll see if this yields any results. But Peskov, for example, was outraged, saying that the Kremlin is not satisfied with Trump's reaction to Operation Web. Well, he didn't prevent it, he didn't help. And he added that there's no need to do anything like that anymore. Well, it's the same reaction yet again. Meanwhile, the New York Times writes that US President Trump is dissatisfied with the actions of Putin and Zelensky, but he treats them differently. He expresses disappointment with both Putin and Zelensky. However, according to sources, Trump has repeatedly called Zelensky a bad guy and accused him of escalating the situation, which could lead to a nuclear conflict. At the same time, he sometimes expresses understanding, noting that Ukraine is defending itself. In the case of Putin, he shows more restraint. He has repeatedly emphasized his very good attitude toward the Russian dictator. Well, what can I say? That's the situation. We see all of this, we are observing, but despite everything, we keep doing our job, and things will flare up even more in Russia. I believe in that. And these are the plans for our summer campaign. But there may be difficulties because the US is delaying the supply of weapons. This is also a fact that could affect the front. That's why we need to look for solutions here. Our European partners, our internal resources, we must continue to defend ourselves. We have no choice, because until Russia is diminished, until Russia is humiliated and restrained, this will go on. So, friends, take care of yourselves, subscribe to the channel, and glory to Ukraine.